What's the best way to get employees to buy into company strategy? Do you cascade it down through layers of management, or should the CEO get out there himself and rally the troops? Well, INSEAD Professor of Organizational Behavior Charles Galunic has done some pretty interesting research on that topic with surprising results, and he joins us now. Welcome to INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you, Shelley. Nice to be here.
Okay, so what is it? What do? You tell the manager, or the CEO gets out there and tells the troops?
Right. Well, the results for us were actually quite surprising. Initially, we had thought that the immediate supervisor, the person who oversees your work and daily life and so on, would be the greatest source of influence. If you have a lot of interaction with the supervisor, you're bound to understand and accept the strategy. But in fact, the supervisor had no direct influence on being aware of the strategy and accepting the strategy. The greatest source of influence by far were the senior managers of these business units. The more engaged they were with employees bidirectionally, the more those employees would understand and accept the strategy.
Your working paper is called Embedding Strategy. Very descriptive. How big a sample did you survey? What was the company? How many people?
The company is a large corporation, global corporation. We had over 60,000 respondents in this survey. This is the yearly employee survey, their engagement survey. They have this, sorry, not yearly, it's every 4 years, I believe. We have within that the target group are the business units, and there's over 350 of those. So first of all, we're not talking about corporate strategy, because I don't expect people down in the organization to understand the corporate strategy. These are the local business units and their strategies. Do you accept and understand those, which is quite relevant. So we had a very large sample, plenty of business units to look at.
And if I remember correctly, a very high percentage as well of respondents.
Yes, so they receive over 85%.
Which is astoundingly high.
Which is great, yeah, which is quite high, yeah.
Now, you ask a question in the paper, which I'm going to repeat here. Why do some employees understand and accept their company's business strategy better than others? And why is it important that they do?
The first thing to talk about is what did we measure? We measured strategy embeddedness as basically two things. One is, do you understand the strategy? Could you explain the strategy to a peer that came in the organization? Could you explain it? Do you understand it? And so on. And that's important. But the second issue is just as important, is do you accept it? Do you like this strategy? Do you agree with it? And so when we talk about strategic embeddedness, it's this combination of understanding and of accepting. Secondly, it is the business unit level strategy. It's not the corporation strategy. So it's at a level at which you should be able to be, telling people what the strategy is and accepting it or not.
Because you deal with it every day in what you're doing, basically.
Exactly, right. And this is important because in this context and in companies like this, you can't be telling people what to do on a daily basis. You can't measure every single action that they take. You have to assume that they will do some things that are in line with hopefully the greater mission of the organization, its strategy, and so on. So measuring the extent to which they are embedded in the strategy is very important. It's very important for companies to have this. So the issue for us was the relative impact, right? We had task conditions that we looked at, the job conditions. We had the supervisor's effect, and we looked at the senior management effects. Task or job conditions played a large role, as you might imagine. Is my task clearly specified? Do I have the resources I need to do my job, and so on? Team conditions, does my team work well together? Are objectives clear, and so on? And development conditions, do I receive education and development in line with my job? Do I have opportunities to train and develop, and so on? All of these things, we assume that where people are positive about them, they're more likely to be positive if these things are linked up, if they're connected to the strategy. Supervisor's role, as I've said, made no difference, no direct difference. But we did a type of analysis called mediation analysis, which showed that supervisors have a very strong indirect effect. The supervisors have an effect on the local job conditions. Where the supervisors are engaged, they're doing their job in the eyes of the employees, the local job conditions are much more likely to be positive, and then this is driving engagement. So we mustn't dismiss the supervisors.
They play into the job conditions, basically.
They play into the job conditions, exactly.
You deal with them every day.
Exactly. They help set up job conditions that we believe are more positive when they're more linked up. So that's what the supervisor does. But the greatest impact by far of these different coefficients, the things we looked at, was the senior managers. When they're engaged, when people feel they're engaged, being listened to and receiving communication, people are much more likely to understand and accept the strategy.
Aside from those three areas that you looked at, who within an organization might be likely to get strategy? I mean, sort of the personality, somebody with tenure, higher placed person, making more money.
Yeah, what you would think that people who are longer in the organization would clearly be at an advantage to understand and accept the strategy, but we didn't find that. The results kind of flip-flopped around, and we're not exactly sure why. It may be that people who are longer in a company, who maybe they're quite a long time at the extremes, they may see strategies come and go, and maybe they're not on board with the latest fad, if you will, the latest strategy. And so sometimes convincing them may be more difficult. We also looked at seniority or level in the company, and that was very powerful. The more senior you are, clearly,
you buy into it or you wouldn't be senior.
The more you buy in. And a lot of the disconnects were further down. If anything, it showed us, and through other data that we saw within this company, the further down you go, the greater the chances for a substantial disconnect. People really sometimes have no clue what that strategy is. And I think leaders in the organization don't realize fully that it's their job to be out there pounding the pavement, the hallways, and making sure that people are on the strategy. Yeah.
Does everybody really have to buy into the strategy in order to do a good job? I mean, some people are piling bricks, others are building a wall, others are building a house. I mean, does everybody have to be building the house?
No, that's a very good question, and I think this is a fair criticism of this line of research. No, not everybody has to understand the strategy. And in an organization that's highly modular and the jobs are very disconnected from the big picture, fine, not everybody has to understand the strategy. But I think we're living in a world where we expect people to work more on their own initiative. They have to take steps to fulfill customer needs and solve problems within the organization. And often guiding them along the way is what they believe to be the strategy of that business unit, of that organization. If they don't understand that, they may be working at cross purposes to what you're trying to do in the company.
You seem to be saying that maybe cascading is not the best way to communicate. Is there any evidence that you might suggest that maybe that will go away, and that, or advice you might have for a senior manager to get out there if he really wants things to take root?
Well, what we're saying is that cascading alone is probably not enough. I mean, clearly every company will cascade. You have to have people who are C-1 and then C-2 parroting the strategy and being in line. It's not as effective for the same reasons that the games in childhood weren't effective at relaying messages. You remember the Chinese whispers, I think the game was called. You say something to someone's ear and they pass it on to the next person. And it was funny, and it was done because by the end the message got garbled. I think the same way, I think for the same reasons you have problems with cascades in companies. Sometimes they need to hear things directly from the source of strategy. The other reason I think cascades are not as effective is nobody has as much symbolic power as that general manager, as the head of that business unit. We humans are in many ways hierarchical, and that lead figure has a lot of symbolic influence. So when that lead figure, he or she, when they come down and when they engage with employees and talk about strategy, I think it's more likely to be believed and hopefully accepted.
So what are your key takeaways here? What should we be remembering from your paper?
Well, a couple of things. I think the first thing is that the local task conditions do matter. I think these have to be linked up to the strategy. I think if you're creating a context where the way the task is designed, the development opportunities, if they're linked up to the strategy, you're more likely to have people buy into the strategy. Okay, this is an assumption we make, but I think the data is consistent with this. Secondly, don't dismiss the supervisors. Don't over-rely upon them to deliver the message, because their level of engagement had no direct effect on strategic embeddedness. But don't underestimate their importance. They're important for crafting those local job conditions, the education opportunities, and the rest of it. And finally, I think senior leaders should be encouraged to get out there and to find ways to engage with employees, either directly face-to-face or today with all the technology we have through various virtual forums, through using video means, and so on.
Charles Galunic, thank you very much for being with us on INSEAD Knowledge.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, thank you.